Hey there, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into this one single idea that, well, it could completely change how you think about healing. And it all boils down to this one kind of wild statement. Your traumas are proof that you're not completely insane, and your neuroses are the roadmap that points the way to healing, right? I mean, your first reaction is probably, hold on, what? That sounds backwards. How can the stuff that hurts us the most be a sign that we're sane? And how can it be a guide? It feels like a total contradiction. But stick with me here, because this is actually a really, really hopeful idea. So that's what we're going to do in this explainer. We're going to take this paradox and just pull it apart. We'll look at it piece by piece, and hopefully by the end, we'll have a new and honestly a much more empowering way to think about ourselves. You see, this is a huge shift in how we look at things. Normally, we think of trauma and all our neuroses as signs that something's wrong with us, that we're broken or flawed or have some kind of disorder. But what if that's not it at all? This new perspective says, no, no, no. Those things show that your mind is being responsive. It's trying to be protective. It's giving you information. It's about switching from judging ourselves to just getting curious. Okay, let's tackle that first big idea, the one that really makes you stop and think. How on earth can trauma be proof of sanity? And yeah, that's a totally fair question. Because let's be real, trauma feels like absolute chaos. It feels like pain. It feels like the furthest thing from being sane. So, how do we even begin to square that circle? Well, let's just step back and think about what it means to be sane. A sane mind, fundamentally, is one that reacts appropriately to what's happening around it, right? So if you go through something truly awful, something dangerous, or completely overwhelming, what's the sane response? Is it to just shake it off and be fine? No way. The sane, logical, appropriate response is to be deeply, deeply affected. So you see, trauma isn't a symptom of a broken mind. It's the mark of a sane mind that went through an insane situation. And this is the key takeaway here. Your trauma, it's like an echo. It's the echo of a moment where your mind and your body did exactly what they needed to do to keep you alive. They reacted perfectly to a situation that was completely overwhelming. So in that light, trauma stops being this shameful pathology, and it becomes a testament to your own sanity. All right, so we've kind of wrapped our heads around the trauma as sanity part. But what about that other piece, the neuroses? All those anxieties, compulsions, the fears that don't make sense. How can they be a roadmap?
Let's stick with this map idea, because it's a really good one. Imagine that nagging anxiety you have or that weird compulsion. Think of that as the big X on a treasure map. It's telling you, dig here. Now, instead of trying to erase the X, what if you got curious? You start following the path backwards from that X, from that behavior. You trace it back to the feelings that fuel it. And eventually, where do you end up? You end up at the treasure chest, which in this case is the original core wound that the behavior was created to protect.
And that's the big aha moment. These neurotic patterns, they're not random glitches in your system. They were actually incredibly clever, even creative solutions that your sane mind came up with to survive that original trauma. Yeah, maybe they're not so helpful anymore. They might even be causing problems now. But once upon a time, they were absolutely essential. They're like artifacts from an old survival kit. Okay, so let's put it all together now. We've got two big pieces. Trauma is proof you're sane, and your neuroses are the roadmap. So how do they actually connect to help you heal? Well, it's actually a pretty simple, logical sequence. First, there was the event, the trauma. Then, your sanity kicked in and you had the right reaction to it. Then, to manage that reaction and try to keep you safe, your mind created the neuroses. These are the clues it left behind. And all those clues, when you start paying attention to them, they form the map. And that map, it leads you right back to the source. And that's where the real work of healing can finally happen. And I really, really want to emphasize this point. This is not, and I repeat, not about blaming yourself. It's not about getting bogged down in the past. It's the exact opposite. It's about finding compassion for yourself. It's about understanding your own internal logic. It's about finally being able to look at the parts of yourself that you struggle with, the parts you don't like, and saying, okay, I get it. I see why you're here. You had a job to do. So, what does this mean for the journey itself? For actually healing? Well, it changes everything about how we approach it. At the end of the day, it really comes down to this. We spend so much of our lives at war with ourselves, right? We fight our symptoms, we try to crush our anxieties. We basically declare war on the parts of us we think are broken. But this idea, it asks a different question. What if healing isn't a war at all? What if it's not a fight? What if healing is what happens when you finally put down your weapons, stop trying to destroy the map, and you just start to read it? When you finally listen to what it's been trying to tell you all along?
So I want to leave you with this. For so long, the question has probably been, what's wrong with me? I want to invite you to ask a new question, a much more powerful and much more compassionate question. What is my roadmap telling me? Thanks for exploring this with me today.